The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. And by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff, in stock at coolstuffinc.com. The Dice Tower, episode 638.
Best of 2019.
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, all hands on deck for the best games of 2019. Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and I team up to discuss our favorites of the year in various categories, culminating in our top 10 games of the year. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the Nick Fury to our Avengers, Tom Vassell.
Sure. I don't think I assembled anyone. Can I be Captain America?
No, I like you as Nick Fury better.
Haven't we done this one before?
No, I think he was Captain America before, and now he's Nick Fury.
Got it.
Okay.
Well, let me then spoil that for everybody. If we were doing our top 10 movies of the year, Avengers Endgame is number 1. Number 2...
Through 10, probably?
Top 10 movie... Eric, you just spoiled my joke.
I know.
Wah, wah.
Never mind.
One for the 10 times I viewed it this year.
All right. Well, folks, welcome to the show. I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Andy Hutchinson.
I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Eric Summerer. We're all together.
Woo!
For like the 10th or so year in a row, we're taking a retrospective look at the past year. And we used to do this in a much longer way, and it took 2 episodes, and it was just too much and too long.
Yeah, people are sick of us by this point in the year.
I hope not, but thank you, Eric. So, again, we're just going to be taking a look back over the year. The majority of this episode will be taking a look at our top 10 games of the year, not of all time.
Of all year.
Well, it's interesting because Z, Garcia, and myself are going through the decade in retrospective, going back and looking at a year, and it's a lot easier to look at a year 5-6 years down the road.
Yes.
Yeah, agreed.
It's a little harder when we're living it.
Okay.
Honestly, I was going through the Board Game Geek list of games that were released in 2019 just to refresh my memory. And what I was mostly struck by is how many games in 2019 that I haven't gotten to play yet.
Yep, exactly.
Yes.
Sure.
Isn't that every year, though?
Yes, but it gets worse every year. If not because
Yes.
of it's not percentage-wise, but just there's so many games you can't play.
Sure.
I've just stopped worrying that much about it. You can't play all the games. What do you do?
Yeah. And plus, like, there's a bunch of games that you now want to play in 2020 from 2019, and you're playing catch-up, but then they keep coming out with new games. So if like, nobody released any games, that would really help a lot next year.
Yes.
Man, could you imagine if that happened?
Just,
That's some real
this is a
out-of-the-box
moratorium
thinking
year.
there, Eric.
Eric, first of all, Eric is like basically wishing the Dice Tower out of existence.
Well, it wouldn't help you. It would help me a lot, is what I'm saying.
Also me.
I could catch up. If everyone could just pause, I could catch up. That would be great.
On a personal level, yes. When I was putting the show notes together and I was deleting last year's show notes, and it was like, oh, there's a tsunami of games. Well, guess what? That did not change from 2018 to 2019. But what are people's thoughts on the year? What would you say are trends, things that you've noticed this year? I'll go last.
Oh, come on. Did you not see? Okay. I'm going to let Eric say his because I agree with it, and I don't want to take away your thunder, so Eric, take it away.
Sure. It does seem like we're seeing more and more remixes or reworkings of games. This is not entirely a new trend, but it seems to have happened a lot and in more ways. We're seeing like dice versions of board games, so Rolled West as opposed to Gold West. We're seeing a reworkings of games, Glenmore 2 and Marco Polo 2. We're also seeing board game versions of card games like Expedition to Newdale and Oh My Goods. It just seems like a lot of the same ideas getting redone, reworked. And I'm wondering if that is a symptom of having so many games out. It's that same deal of sequels in the film world that it's much easier to sell a known property to know that this is the Oh My Goods board game, or just like this is the movie version of a television show that everybody recognizes. I think that has a lot to say about how glutted the market is right now.
It's like fashion. I used to work in fashion. I know there is a point here. But like fashion, you have staples. You have the white shirt, right? And how many ways can we change that to fit into our wardrobe? Yes, we've seen it before, but how can we make it different? So people like what they're familiar with, but but you like that twist on things, so it's different but familiar. So anyway, I agree with you. That's something that's happened a lot this year.
Cool.
But I actually think this is not necessarily a bad thing. When I look at the reprints, I did my top 10 reprints this year. They're really good. In fact, many of those reprints are as good as some of the new games that are coming out, like the Glenmore 2 and things like that. They're fantastic versions of those older games. And things like Dune was reprinted this year, and D Mocker. Two very different games, both been out of print for a while. Now they're back in print. I like that. But yes, it is because everyone's trying to scramble up and print the stuff out.
Sure.
Kind of in opposition or to the glut that we were talking about, I also think that this has been a year where we've seen some fairly significant players announce that they're pulling back. So we've seen Alderac, Z-Man, and just recently Tasty Minstrel Games all basically say, we're not going to print as many games. We're gonna downshift and really focus more on promoting the games that we have and really focus on putting out high quality games because there's just too much stuff coming out, and games aren't, even good games aren't getting the attention that they deserve. And I think that sounds great on principle. We'll see what happens, because meanwhile, I think a counterpoint is in mass market, right? I feel like this is really the year that we're seeing mass market take hold and make waves in hobby. So you're seeing games like Jaws or the Minecraft board game or Villainous, Funkoverse, these games that are popping up. They are going to Target or Walmart exclusive a lot of the time, or at least they're hitting the shelves at Target and Walmart, but they're good. And people who in the past have kind of eschewed mass market game shelves are going, oh, that Jaws game was actually really entertaining. I really like that one. And so I think that that's an interesting balance to some hobby market publishers, focused publishers saying, oh, we're going to downshift a little, but then you see this kind of surge of higher quality mass market games hitting the shelves.
Yes, it is interesting. I know that the AEG did that experiment with pulling back from they're doing fewer, better games, and they're definitely doing fewer, and they're definitely doing better games, for sure. Mm-hmm. Tasty Minstrel just announced this, I think, a few days ago, actually. It wasn't very long.
Right. That's their plan for next year, I believe. Did
Z-Man announce this? I must have missed that one. You had mentioned Z-Man.
Oh. Did I?
Oops.
I didn't.
Well, no, I mean, the thing is that concerns me about this is that when a company does that, I'm glad for that company. It's just then that 3 Kickstarter companies step up to pick up the slack.
Yeah, I hear you on that one.
And, then there's a bunch of companies that are just still throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. But we'll see. We've seen, I predict next year we'll see. We saw a few mergers this year. I think we'll see more next year because not everyone's going to be able to sustain their companies. Definitely, I thought 2018 was a little lacking on the Euro game side of things, and that is not the case this year. Euro games are been strong. I did a 10 best Euro games, and I could have easily done 20. Yep. There's so many good, solid ones that have come out. And the Kickstarter, while it was very strong this year, I had predicted that 8 of the top 10 ranked games on Board Game Geek would be Kickstarter, and they were not. Only 4 of them were. And that's partially because Stonemaier has 2 of them, Tapestry and Wingspan, and Stonemaier is still dominating a lot of what goes on, for better or for worse, with his stuff. And Board and Dice Games, has become a bigger player in the industry. When they were NSKN, I thought they were okay, but now their stuff is very, very impressive. And I think that PAX has now cemented their position as the number 2 convention at in America at least.
Yeah.
After Gen Con, it's PAX.
All we need is a few more major releases timed to PAX, and it will be much more of a flagpole in the event year.
I think it's in terms of almost anything except for weather.
I don't want it to turn into a Gen Con, though. That's what I'm scared is going to happen.
Do you think that's bad for the hobby, though? I understand from a personal level, but is that bad for the hobby to have that?
Well, I think it's going to it would change the dynamic. The people that are going to PAX are not necessarily the people that are going to Gen Con.
Yeah, but I love that.
No, I think that's great, and I want it to stay like that. I just don't want it to turn into a Gen Con, and it just has a different vibe, a different feeling to it. It's almost like I don't want to say desperation, but it's just, it's I don't know.
Well, I think one of the biggest limiters that would prevent that from happening is just when in the year PAX Unplugged is currently running. And Eric, what you were just saying about when publishers start targeting releases to PAX a little more consistently, I don't know how often or how much of a surge we will see on that front, because releasing games in early December is not great for sales for a number of reasons, in terms of as games can hit the market, hit retail shelves, go through the distribution channel, get enough buzz to get people buying them. I just don't think targeting games for actual debut or release, preview is something different, but debut or actual release in that PAX timeframe, I think is suboptimal for a business practicum point of view. So I'm not sure that we will see that happen unless PAX shifts when they run.
Yeah, it's probably better. I mean, PAX, I think, is good for getting those end-of-the-year releases,
Sure.
But you're right. Trying to time something for PAX does seem inopportune. Essen is sort of the last major release date, and then you sort of filter those last 2 months of the year. It is a great shopping convention if you're trying to get those end-of-year releases. But yeah, I think you're right, that timing it would be a bad idea.
All right, well, let's talk about games that have surprised us in a positive way. I could easily make a list of the other way. Over the course of this year, things that we played and we're like, wow, this was pretty good. Mandy, we'll let you go first. What do you got?
Oh, well, I was looking at your list, but I'll wait till you get to yours. But Clip Cut Parks was a surprise to me. I was worried. I'm like, oh boy, scissors in a game? Is this going to go wrong?
They seem to be safe scissors. I went and checked them out.
They're rounded, yes, tips on them. But, the whole roll and cut, I was like, well, where is this going? Is it something that's going to be enjoyable? And I have to tell you, it looks very simple when you see the game. And I know this because I taught it at PAX and you're teaching families, right? And I said, oh, this is kind of a strategic game. I don't know. This might be a bit much for families. And lucky for us, we had some great and really smart people in the room. But there's a lot going on. It's not just a simple roll and cut. You have to be strategic or half your sheet's garbage, you know what I mean? And you've lost the game. So it was a pleasant surprise for me.
I enjoyed that one as well. Roll and slice is something that could be expanded upon. I think we could see that. And I like the permanence of it. Yes. You can't get out the eraser and fix what you did if you make a cut in the wrong place.
I've never done that in a roll and write. Ever.
Well, for me, my biggest surprise that I could recall off the top of my head is Time Chase. This is that trick-taking game that you can go backwards down the timeline and revisit tricks that have already been completed. As a huge trick-taking game fan, I'm always looking. You put trick-taking in a game description, and I'm going to instantly want to check it out. And sometimes that really pays off, and sometimes it's like, okay, that was fine. But Time Chase, I thought, really did it well. I had no idea when I read the description how it would actually work, and it took me a few rounds to have it really kind of click. But once it clicked, I just thought it was fabulous. It was a clever way to torque the trick-taking concept in general, and it was thematic. I mean, you're literally going back in time, revisiting old tricks and changing them up. And I thought that was incredibly clever. And so Time Chase is my surprise of 2019.
Yeah. It is really cool getting to go back and the situation has changed. Maybe the Trump suit has changed or just different cards in people's hands at that point. And so you can actually adjust who was winning at that point. And the timing of figuring all that out is really tricky in that game.
Yes.
I resisted the urge to sing Back in Time, but I'm singing it in my head.
All right.
Just very quietly.
Just quietly.
I'm cool with that.
So when I first saw Horrified at Gen Con, I kind of wrote it off as yet another of those mass market, tie-in games, themed games. I don't know, it doesn't look that interesting until I got a chance to play it. Buzz certainly helped there, but that is a very solid cooperative game that just hums and so easy to understand. And I was just really surprised that a Universal Monsters tie-in could be such a solid game. So Horrified was my surprise.
Yeah, there's really a lot. I agree with Eric. Horrified just really kind of blew me away. I am going to stop this, right? If Fars Perens, or I guess the Funkoverse team at this point in time, if they make something new, I'm just going to assume it's good now. They can only surprise me the other way, because I just am continually surprised. And Horrified is that kind of horror game that I can play with my kids. It's the horror game you can play with people, and it's like, ooh, spooky, but it's really not.
Right.
And it's not Cthulhu, thank you. Or zombies. And that's just a nice change of pace, and it's fun. And for me, it completely replaces Pandemic. I'll use this over Pandemic.
I haven't played it.
Oh,
it's hard
Which
to
is
get
shocking
here.
to me, Mandy, because that thematically, that is so up your alley.
It's hard to get here because I think you all can get it in Target or stores like that.
They had
send you
many
a copy for
copies at
Christmas.
PAX.
I know, but that's in American dollars. Hello.
I can't help you there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right, well, one thing I know we all like to talk about is artwork in games. And this one is always hard for me to remember. I'm like, I got to quick go look at all the boxes. But what did y'all think about art?
I was really impressed with the illustrations in Wingspan. There was 300 cards in there, and they really brought together that sort of Audubon Society guidebook feeling, as you have all these tons of different birds in there. But I'm also really taken with the Aquacorn Cove art. I was already a fan of the Katie O'Neill graphic novel to begin with, but the art in Aquacorn Cove really brings to life that serenity and the charming nature of the graphic novel, then translated into the board game. It's just really solid. So Aquacorn Cove, slight runner-up to Wingspan.
This was a tough one for me because my gut instinct, as soon as best art, I instantly wanted to say Unmatched. Because Unmatched is created in partnership between Restoration Games and Mondo Games. And Mondo, of course, is the art studio or culture studio that does all these fabulous movie posters and records and all this other stuff. But, of course, because I'm associated with Restoration Games, it's really hard for me to ever select something that Restoration's involved with for these tops lists. So I want to be really clear about that. So I will say my gut instinct was to say Unmatched, but to balance that out, I will say Parks had my favorite art in games this year. Parks very smartly leveraged that 50 national parks poster series and art series. So they're just incredibly high quality, beautiful, beautiful prints that are exactly the kind of thing that you want to hang on your wall. And it's a joy to look at.
So I won't spend too much time on mine, but Aquacorn Cove I found super cute. I mean, I love the graphic novels, as Eric was talking about. And at the PAX Unplugged, they had a new cover for the convention version of the game. The name of the artist is escaping me. I think, Suzanne, this is someone you would probably know well. But it's just adorable. And I know people say, it's for kids. It's for everybody, and I think anyone can enjoy it. And then to echo Suzanne's sentiment, Parks was awesome, and I've actually been on the website, and I have a few things in my basket to purchase. Prints.
There's a lot of good art. I mean, at this point, I assume a game will have good art for the most part. The one that really caught my eye was Call to Adventure. This one here from the folks who made Dungeon Boss. Monster Boss. Sorry. Boss Monster. Man, you think I could get the name right.
Monster Boss.
Monster Boss!
That's a different game.
That's what Z called me.
Get into my office. It's time for your annual review.
No, but each of the pictures on this, I mean, the game is essentially just making your backstory of you as a character in some fantasy setting. But the art, I would hang these up on my wall. I think they're really cool. It's very evocative of just different things that happen. And I'm kind of excited because they're doing Brandon Sanderson's stories and Patrick Rothfuss's stories. I'm not as interested in those. But, I mean, it just that there's so much cool artwork, and I really like it. So I'm looking forward to the future. But that's my favorite art.
Is that the one with the split box? Like on the cover, it's like a blue and
yes.
okay.
It's like red and white.
I really like the
Blue
art
and
of that
red.
one.
Yeah, it's pretty.
All right, so what about cooperative games? I know no one here likes to work together, but what if you did?
I really had to stretch my imagination on this one because I really don't like working with people. It's just not in my wheelhouse. So my selection for best cooperative game is the Exit series. And so that I'm not trying to cheat the system or anything like that, I really feel like the Exit Catacombs of Horror was phenomenal. This was the big box Exit
That was
game.
good.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it lists 2018 on BGG, but that was in Germany. So in the US, it hit in the market 2019. So I'm saying Exit the Catacombs of Horror was my favorite. And I will give a nod to Arion from Z-Man Games, which is part of the Universe series of games, and you can play those solo or two-player cooperative. I really only play them solo, but I'm cooperating with myself. I work very well with myself playing Arion, and it's a delightful experience. So there you go.
I call shenanigans.
That's why I slid in the Exit game.
What are you calling shenanigans about, Eric?
I'm playing cooperatively with myself.
Oh,
At least it wasn't a traitor game.
That's true.
yeah, that's fair. So
Am I on my own team or not?
I hear that a lot from Suzanne, you know. So the best cooperative game for me was Atlantis Rising, the second edition. I had not played the previous edition, but this was a game we got together, and I had a few friends who were concerned, oh boy, someone's going to take over, this is going to get nasty. And it was really great. Everybody paid attention what everybody's abilities were, so we worked together to use them effectively in the game. And it wasn't angry. Sometimes cooperative games can get a little angry because of the one or two people.
Who are you playing with?
Personalities just come out in certain games, okay? I'm not faulting anyone. I'm just saying. We had a very pleasant experience. Everyone took everyone's feelings into consideration in this game. And I just like the whole theme of it. We're trying not to drown, so we have to work together, right? So yeah, Atlantis Rising was quite good.
All right, well, if I was picking a 2020 game, I'd say The Crew. I consider that to be a 2020 game because
Yes.
it's not out in English yet. But that would be number one by a mile. But as it is, I'm going to say Lord of the Rings, Journeys in Middle-earth. Very fantastic.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Great game. And they just released a new way to play it, actually, on the module where it's called Adventure Mode so that it's not as hard and it lets you go out and explore without the pressures of the game kind of forces you not to go explore everything. It forces you to keep moving. So if you want to go explore stuff, you can. And it really does a good marriage of app and board game. I like it a lot.
This one is good. I enjoyed it. I like the cards. You know how you use dice in Mansions? I like the use of cards in this game. It was good.
Yeah, this one does work really well.
Yeah.
So I had guessed that Tom would say horrified, and he actually did until he just now edited the document. So, folks, he's not playing fair. So
Well, stop trying to outguess me then.
So what I did say was Quirky Circuits, which is a neat little combination of Robo-Rally style mechanics programming, but it's a cooperative programming, and you have to sort of suss out what your teammates are able to do as you guide a Roomba riding cat or a sushi making robot or a robotic bee around various playgrounds. It's a neat little game. Quirky Circuits.
This could have made my list, except I got to play it once at a convention, and then my order got lost in the mail, and it literally arrived yesterday afternoon. Oh, no. And I haven't played it since that one time at the convention, but I had such an incredibly good time playing it. It combines elements of two games that I just adore, and now I can't wait to go play it again. So I might actually have, if we were to redo this list after I've had a chance to play more 2019 games, Quirky Circuits could rise up mine.
Well, I mean, if you do it over the weekend, I can maybe edit it in if you
Ooh,
want.
okay. Noted.
Mine is Quirky Circuit. I'll just...
Great.
You'll never notice.
I'll figure it out.
All right, what about expansions? Tons of expansions come out every year. So many for many of our favorite games.
Yeah.
And you would just be a goof not to take advantage of the wonderful growth to existing products that you love, right, Tom?
I 100% agree with you, Suzanne.
So,
I mean, why not expand a game that you enjoy so much? It's a known quantity. I mean, you already like that game.
It's the smartest way to spend your money and time, for sure.
well,
Oh, Mandy, so what's your choice?
so I think what I've written here verbatim, I don't play expansions. Who has time for that?
I'm raising my hand.
Oh, I don't get them because I never have time to play them. So if I had to pick one, and it's literally the only one that I've played, but I really like it, are the claim expansions.
Wait, you didn't play the new Ticket to Ride maps?
Is that...
I'm trying to give you an out, okay?
I've literally played Ticket to Ride. Wait, twice. That's it.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. You don't like Ticket to
I'm
Ride.
sorry,
Never mind.
it's not my thing. So, I did actually recently play the Claim expansions. I like Claim, the 2-player. Would it be like trick-taking game? And they have new factions that you can add in, and I've definitely played that quite a bit, and I really enjoy it. So that would be the one I like, and it is literally the only expansion that I've played this year. Ooh.
Well, mine is Seventh Continent. What goes up must come down. This mega expansion for Seventh Continent allows you to go under the earth on a raft and on a down this canal, and all kinds of bad things
Did
happen
you
to
say
you.
go under earth on a rat?
A raft.
Oh, I thought he said
A
rat,
raft.
too.
I thought you said rat, and I'm like,
Me too.
what?
I would play a game if we were riding a giant
That
rat
sounds more like a
underground.
flat
I'm
hat
just
game.
saying.
Okay.
And then, or you can go up in this hot air balloon and fly over the earth and run into things in the clouds. It's really neat. It's just a really cool concept. I love the storytelling in Seventh Continent. I need more games that give me this level of storytelling. That's my favorite expansion.
I need to play the original more before I can even think about
Well,
that expansion.
good news though, Eric. They just released a smaller version of it, a more compact version of Seventh Continent. that
Yeah.
you can
They
get.
did?
Some retail
Oh.
versions have it. It's in the
did
Dice
hear
Tower
about
library.
this, yes.
Actually, both are in the Dice Tower library, so you can play the big one or the small one.
Okay. My favorite expansion of the year was the Quacks of Quedlinburg expansion, the Herb Witches. It adds some more potion ingredients as well as these witch tokens that you draw a special power that you can activate once per game by spending your token. Those tokens are worth points if you don't use them. But it's one of those that you can easily fold in without adding that much more complexity to the main system. So it's, one of the problems with expansions is that you often can't get them to the table if you're playing with new players. A lot of expansions are best for people who already know the game really well. And so they don't hit the table as much. This one, you can just say, all right, everybody, here we go. I'm explaining the game and I can easily fold in these mechanisms. And so the Herb Witches expansion is getting a lot of playtime for the Quacks of Quedlinburg.
I like it.
And as much as I tease Mandy about not playing expansions, I kind of set you up there. I apologize. I actually
Kind
don't.
of. That was on a silver platter.
Totally threw it under the bus.
Yes. But in reality, I don't get to play a lot of expansions either. But when one of my all-time favorite games gets an expansion, I'm going to make an effort. And that's what happened with Metro X, which is one of the best roll and write games ever created. And they released 3 new maps, Sendai, Hakata, and Nagoya. And oh my gosh, Metro X is actually very tricksy. It's a very challenging roll and write game and very strategic and harder than it looks. And then they threw in these 3 new maps, and the starting spots and ending spots are all over the place. And you have ending spots in the middle of it's just wild how they changed up the maps and created really fresh feeling new challenges for people who are already fans of the game. And that fit what I wanted out of them perfectly. So the Metro X expansions are my favorite of the year.
All right. Well, you guys mentioned earlier about reprints and redone of games, and there's so many of them. Let's talk about our favorites there. So first I'll mention Atlantis Rising. That was already mentioned by somebody somewhere.
Oy, oy, oy. I don't know who it could be.
Oh, Mandy said it for cooperative game. No, I just remembered. I forgot which section it was under.
He wasn't listening.
I know. I had to slide back up to look at the document. I just forgot. I'm getting older. Atlantis Rising. I liked the first one, but the reprint is not only a phenomenal production. I mean, it is an amazing. It's not like. So Ted Osbach made Suburbia this year, the deluxe, weighs 200 pounds version of it. Just this huge game. That's fantastic. Atlantis Rising redid the game, but it's the kind of game you would still go to the store and buy. And that I find just as impressive because that's the kind of game you pull off your shelf and it looks great. Anyway, it also plays well. They streamlined it. I think it's just a fantastic reprint.
So Suzanne has been reluctant to talk about Unmatched, although she did it anyway. I'm going to say Unmatched, though, which is technically a reworking of Star Wars Epic Duels. At least it's similar in systems, and I think it's a lovely distillation with really cool characters and wonderful art as well. It makes it just a little bit more accessible, even if you're not a fan of Star Wars, or you don't need to know the properties that these characters come from, because they all sort of feel different and, everyone knows who Sasquatch is. Good times for Unmatched, and my kids like it too.
That's very rewarding.
It's a very fun game.
For me, I'm going to say the Ancient World 2nd Edition from Red Raven Games. Honestly, when I think about reprint, and I appreciate what you're saying about Unmatched, but Unmatched definitely takes Epic Duels and twists it pretty significantly, right? Just in theme and art style and changing of mechanics. Whereas I look at something like Ancient World, and the 2nd edition feels very familiar to the 1st edition in a lot of positive ways, but the changes add and refine in a really nice way. So it's great that you have some component upgrades, and that's lovely. But then I love that we've got a new resource added to the mix. And I really love that thematic. Now the Titans can attack you. And I thought that was just a big thumbs up twist to Ancient World. But you don't play Ancient World 1st edition and Ancient World 2nd edition go, wow, these hard. You go, oh, okay. Oh, I see what he did. Oh, I really like this. That's awesome. Plus, it's Ryan Lockett and Red Raven. So, of course, the game is drop dead gorgeous as well.
Indeed.
Well, I have a horrible way of answering this, but Atlantis Rising, I think, is probably one of the only ones I've played that's been reprinted. But at the top of my list, I've been trying to schedule a game with my game group for weeks now, is Roads and Boats for the reprint of that. So that is one I would like to get to the table, and I haven't yet. And PAX Pamir is another one. It looks fantastic. Again, a game I've actually never played, one I would like to play. So unfortunately, I don't have one I can say that's amazing other than Atlantis Rising, which Tom mentioned, but those are two that are definitely at the top of my list.
Did the Roads and Boats reprint change anything, or was it just a straight-up reprint?
I thought it was just a reprint, but I haven't played the original.
I think it got worse.
Oh, what?
That's probably not, no, it's not true, but I got the reprint. I opened it up and I thought, this is coming out in 2019?
Oh, no.
Then they just did a straight reprint. They just hit reprint button, and
I'm getting mad thinking about it.
I'm really glad Mandy mentioned PAX Pamir, though, because I feel like PAX Pamir deserves extra attention. It's definitely not a game for everyone. It's a little bit heavier, and but I think that Cole Worley really deserves acknowledgement for the work that they did on this game, because it's stunning, it's refined. And I really, really appreciate the thought and care that goes into kind of the historical setting and details and the respect of those things that he puts into that game. And so I'm glad, Mandy, that you mentioned that.
Thanks.
All right. Well, we've kind of led to this. This will not be a surprise, I'm sure, at all. But what about gaming events over the course of the year?
We might have to twist this category somehow, Tom, because it might be getting a little predictable. For me, it hasn't changed. We've done this list. I've participated in this list a couple of times now, and it hasn't changed year over year. I still love Essen, and the more familiar I become with it, the more I like it, the more comfortable I am, and the more I ease into it, primarily because Essen is the show that tends to have the games and publishers present that I just adore, and they're often ones that don't come to U.S. conventions. And then just as you were saying at the top of the show, Tom, I had a great time at PAX Unplugged this year. I thought it was well organized. I thought there were a ton of great events. There was tons of great shopping. And the Reading Terminal Market is right across the street with fabulous, affordable food. So PAX Unplugged's got it going on.
Well, I can't deviate from that. Essen followed by PAX for all the reasons Suzanne has mentioned.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into the Dice Tower stuff. I think that stuff's fantastic, obviously. So non-Dice Tower events, PAX. I think I said this last year, too. Look, I like Essen. I understand you see new games and all that jazz, but it's so exhausting. I like Gen Con, also exhausting. But PAX was not. I don't know what it was. It was crowded, but it wasn't that exhausting. People there, you know what it was? I think everyone was not rushing to get stuff. That happens at Gen Con and Essen. There's stuff, you got to get it. PAX, people at PAX were going around and finding, publishers were telling me they're selling games that are not new. They're selling games that came out 5-6 years ago. And people are buying them because to those people, they're new.
Right.
And they just go, they check out a game and see if it's good or not. The halls were wide. They could have used carpet, but they were wide. And the audience is different. I run across the same people at the other cons. Well, not Essen, I guess, but at Gen Con and Origins and all that, there seems like the same people. At PAX, I saw different folks. Lots of families, too.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I don't think I had a bad experience at any of the conventions we visited this year. PAX is wonderful, but Essen
I'll make
still
that happen next year for you.
edges it out. You're going to make it. Let's make Eric's day terrible. Essen still edges things out just because it is so different from everything else. Just the vibe. I bask in the vibe. And yes, it is an exhausting convention, but I don't feel it as much, I think, just because I'm having such a great time being with this international smorgasbord of people and things to see and stuff to do. And I just love it. But I will say, Tom doesn't want to talk about the Dice Tower stuff, but I will. I want to. I just don't want to be so obvious. The cruise and the retreat are becoming favorites as well because they are a smaller, more intimate group of people. And the more of these big conventions that we do with a lot of scheduled stuff, PAX was very tightly scheduled for me this year, I really appreciate the ones where we get to sit down and play. And like that's what we should be doing during the day is getting to play some stuff and getting to sit down and meet new people. And
yes.
So the opportunity when we have an event that lets us do that, the retreat and the cruise being the Dice Tower events that do that, and East and West as well, where we get to play, I really appreciate being able to do that.
And I think that brings up a good point. We're all sitting here and we're privileged and lucky enough that we get to go to a number of large conventions literally around the world. But a lot of people who love games just can't do that for any variety of reasons. And one of the things I think is fabulous in the hobby gaming industry is the growth of little local conventions popping up all over the place.
Sure.
And I think, as we're talking about loving Essen, which I loved, and one of the greatest things about Essen this year is that we got to play some games once in a while, is don't check out what's local. Check out what's happening locally to you. Not only are there lots of little cons, maybe 50 people, maybe 100 people getting together to play games that are a ton of fun. You can share your game collections, try things that you don't have access to otherwise. But formerly small conventions are growing into mid-sized conventions. Conventions that were 500 people are now 1,500 people with libraries and publisher presence and giveaways and all this other stuff. And if you want that play experience, if you want to explore games you might not otherwise have access to, if you cannot make it to some of these big ones, it's really awesome that there are more and more options for people year over year.
Okay, any other categories anyone want to talk about?
So I put down strangest theme. Often we get to talk about these weird games that come across
Ooh,
our
I love
desk.
that show.
The strangest theme?
Strangest themes.
A game called Fire Tower, which I talked about here on the show, where you are, forest fire tower inhabitants, which would traditionally be searching the forests, looking for signs of fire. But instead of fighting the fire or protecting anyone from the fire. You are using magic, I think, to send the fire toward your opponent's towers so that you burn down their towers before your tower gets burnt down. Which seems to be the opposite of being a...
That's how I hope they act in real life, right? It's a game.
I don't think that's what you're supposed to be doing. But anyway, that's Fire Tower.
Honestly, my kids are watching a ton of Adventure Time, the cartoon right now. That completely seems like something that would happen in an episode of Adventure Time.
It does. Can I say Adventure Time is one of the best finales I've ever seen to a show? It's great. Adventure Time.
I've
great.
never seen
that show.
No, I've never seen it either.
So we used to do a biggest disappointment category in this end of year show, and I guess we've tried to stay away from being negative, but I did want to mention that the Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell game kind of bummed me out because I enjoyed the novel and was very excited to play the Osprey Games tie-in. And while it gets tons of style points, I love the headlines for these feats of magic you are performing. It didn't feel like you were running around London doing feats of magic. It was a sort of a slog of a economic thing that just fell flat, and I was disappointed in it. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell.
I agree. Super disappointing.
Eric, have you or Tom, have you seen that BBC? I think it's BBC, the TV series, the little mini series for.
No, I heard that's very good.
Yeah.
Although the game has kind of quashed me wanting to see it because I'm not going to sure what to call the bad guy.
No, it was. I think Sci-Fi showed it when it aired here in the States, and yeah, I enjoyed that production. It was well done.
Yeah, I like to be diplomatic for the most part when I'm looking at a game, but I was disappointed in a few games this year. It happens, and honestly, one of them for me was Mystery House. And Tom, I know you just named this
game.
like your favorite innovative game of 2019, I think. But for me, I will not argue it was innovative. Yeah. And I absolutely love the idea of the way the box worked. I love the whole concept of the game where you had the placards that you're sliding in and you could pull them out and reveal new paths. All of that on paper was just... I can't wait to try it. Plus, these escape room or choose your own adventure style games that are exploding, which I think would be a trend of like 2018, 2019. I love them all. And so when Mystery House was announced and I heard about it, I was very excited to try it. And maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe I'd over-amped myself up for it. Because in practicality, once we got Mystery House to the table, it was fiddly. The placards, you had to use a flashlight to see in there, but then the flashlight would glare off of the finish on the placards. There was a little bit of iffiness on whether you could see an object or not. And ultimately, we felt like a lot of the game could have been played without that construct of this 3D space, except for... There was one or two puzzles specifically that really leveraged that grid beautifully, and we loved that. But there were just some practical things about the game experience that really disappointed me with Mystery House. That isn't to say I'm not going to play the next story or that I am not excited to see how maybe they can refine it. But I did not have the experience with Mystery House I'd hoped for.
Whoa. She's wrong. But tell us something good.
All right, fair enough. So I didn't quite work them into my top 10. They almost made it, but I realized I had to call them out. That I'm such a fan of card games, just simple little card games that are easy to play and teach. So I wanted to shout out two of those here. Hats is a gorgeous, really fun, simple card game. And Ohanami is another one of these games designed by Stefan Bendorf, who I think I terrified at Essen when I met him.
That was hilarious. Oh my goodness, that was too funny.
Wait, you met Stefan Bendorf?
Yeah. Oh.
I met Stefan Bendorf. Yeah, it was amazing.
See that?
He's
that
very
amplified by 10.
But I'm pretty confident that I really frightened him. But that's okay because he's amazing. And Ohanami is a wonderful, wonderful card game that is pretty easy to get, even though it's not officially released in the U.S. And I suggest you all track it down and play it.
Alrighty. Well, real quick, I want to do a shout out to the best party game I played this year, which is Wavelength. Have you all played this one yet?
Not yet.
I backed it on
Wavelength.
Kickstarter and haven't gotten it yet. I'm excited to try it.
Yeah, I want to say it's right around the corner. You should be getting it soon.
Okay.
It's a team versus team style game in which you have this this dial that you rotate randomly, and then you look at it secretly, and it's somewhere between one side and the other side, a pointer. And then you have a scale, so it might be cold to hot, or it might be beautiful to ugly, or something like that. And then you have to pick something that's in that range that matches the scale. So if I say beautiful, so let's say it's beautiful to ugly, and I say sunrise, and you'd be like, well, it's definitely not on the ugly side, right? But is it all the way over? Does Tom think sunrise is the most beautiful thing? Or maybe he thinks something's more beautiful. Shouldn't he have said his wife? I'm not sure. Which one? Where would he put it? And that's cool. I like that conversation it brings up. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to trying that one.
All right, well, that's that stuff. Now we go to the top 10s.
Top 10!
It's a Dice Tower Top 10!
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.
Number 10.
Let's just kick things off with number 10. We already mentioned Unmatched, the reworking of Star Wars Epic Duels with a new movement system. That's really what I love about this, the map and the line of sight system that works so well, and all these different characters, the great art. Unmatched is a really solid game, and my number 10.
I do want a quick butt in here real quickly. We've mentioned a lot of Unmatched, and this is fantastic, and I do love Unmatched. But I do want to give some love to the Funkoverse games, which are also similar to that, and I don't think we're mentioning at any other point in this episode, but I really did think they were cute and fun and terrific.
They're great. Did you see the new stuff?
No.
Oh, you
No.
didn't? We'll talk later.
Got it.
My number 10 is higher up on someone else's list, so I will just fire it off to there.
My number 10 is a fantastically weird game, and that's The King's Dilemma, which I actually don't remember why it's called that. At the beginning, the king is like, blah, 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 blah. That is the King's Dilemma. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm some hyper group here that wants the kingdom to stick with the old ways and ignore this science. Or whatever group I was. So you're like some group who wants to do something behind the scenes. And in this game, which is a legacy game, you are consistently coming up against dilemmas, moral dilemmas, some pretty strong moral dilemmas, which occasionally you may end up finding yourself voting for a dilemma to go a certain way because it helps your faction, which I would never do in real life, ever, 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 ever. I want to clarify that.
The guilt is real in this game.
The guilt is real in this game. And there were a few times where I couldn't even do it. I had to vote against something because I'm like, well, that hurts me. And then there was sometimes where people said stuff. I'm like, you don't even believe that. But they made anyhow. I really did enjoy it. I liked the storyline was really well written. I thought it was really interesting. The one thing that I think people might not like about it is I think 30% of the game you'll never see. Because you'll make a decision, and sometimes that decision, let's say you meet a guy and he says, my son has magical powers, and you say, no, he doesn't, let's kill him. This is not in the game, but then you kill his son, well, then you can't use his son later on for something else. It's that kind of decision. So I enjoyed this. I'm afraid I may be alone here in this one, but I do like The King's Dilemma.
I played it through. We finished it. I'm going to say, I don't want to give anything away because there was something I really did like in the game. I'll leave it at that. But it's the story that kept us there. That's it.
Sure, and don't get me wrong. I think the story's stronger than the game, which is why it's only my number 10. If the game was as strong as the story, it could move up to my number 1.
100%. So my number 10 is Circadian's First Light. I feel this kind of flew under the radar for a lot of people, and they may have been dissuaded from trying it due to the art that's on the box. But in Circadian's First Light, I think you're playing like researchers and you're managing your crew, which happen to be dice in this game. So dice are kind of like your workers. And you get to do trading, farming, construction, all sorts of things. And there are different areas on the board that you can use these dice to gain resources and garner points during game. but at the end of the game is when it actually matters. You also have a character that you play, and this character allows you to have like a special ability that helps you throughout the game. I personally enjoy the one that doesn't make you pay algae when you take actions. That is very helpful. Strange, but helpful. So after 8 rounds, the person with the most points wins. And I do enjoy the objectives in the game. Any game that has objectives, I love, because it gives you another way of getting points. But dice as workers, ooh, it's right up my alley. And it's deceivingly heavier than it looks. You look at it and you think, it's going to be like an easy breezy game. No, like as the game progresses, you find the turns get slightly longer because more thinking is involved in where you're going to place these workers. So Circadian's First Light was a win for me.
And you use algae as currency?
So what happens, you have a board, like you have I don't know how to explain it, something that covers your board behind the screen, so you're going to roll your dice and place them, and certain spots on your board, you have to pay algae in order to use that die. So if you can't pay for it with the algae, then you can't use that worker or that die. So it's almost like payment to place that worker out on your board or on the other boards that are available to players. So algae becomes important in that fact that you needed to pay for dice to go out onto the board.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to getting this one to the table. It's very high on my list.
Number 9.
Number 9 was Suzanne's number 10, and that is Ship Shape, a game where you're building Ship Shape. You're building your ship's hold through the use of these very thick tiles that have holes in them. Like I think only 3 spaces are covered in this 3x3 grid, and you're drafting the tiles to begin with, actually bidding for the opportunity to draft those tiles, and then placing them in your hold and covering up different sections of the hold to either show advantageous symbols or cover disadvantageous symbols, and then scoring at the end of the round. It has like this physical aspect where you're sort of looking into the pile, and I actually want the second tile down, not the first, and trying to bid to acquire that second tile. But if you tie, then it goes to the next person down who didn't tie, and then you have to rebid. And there's a lot of neat stuff going on here, but still relatively simple to grasp. It just has a lot of complexity in its play. Ship Shape, my number 9.
This is a great game. Good choice, Eric.
Well, and Sue's too. She picked it too.
Oh, yeah, and Sue's. Sorry.
Yeah, why do you like it, Suzanne?
I just think it's fabulous. It's a perfect filler nightcap game. It has a wonderful player count, all the puzzliness of it. And you have to deal with the chaos of the bid. You know you want that second tile down. You bid the wrong way or you just get unlucky. You got to deal with something else. And as quickly as it plays, I like that. And it's just it is a game that when I first played it, I said, I got to play it again. I want to play it again right now. And any game that makes me want to yell when I'm playing it happily is a top 10 for me.
Did you yell Ship Shape?
Ship Shape! Actually.
I know you did.
Yes. And I will point out, though, unfortunately, Eric, you did misname the game. We should be very clear that it is actually Rob Davio's Ship Shape.
Is it really?
Well, Tom, it must be because Rob Davio's Ship Shape is built in to the back of every card as if it's part of the logo, so it must be the proper name.
You tease him about this a lot, don't you?
Not at all. Not at all.
You know what? This is one I have not played yet. I have a copy on its way to me right now because of, well, you guys mostly. So
Woo!
I think this will be a game Tom enjoys 100%.
My number 9 is Miyabi from Haba Games. Ugh, my goodness. It uses polyomino tiles, and you're placing tiles on a grid. The tiles will have a icon on them. Maybe it's a koi pond or a pagoda or a little rose bush. And ultimately, you want to get these icons as high up as you can go because they'll score more points because it's a tile laying game, but it's a tile laying game that lets you build up. And I instantly love that. I think that dimensionality to tile laying games is a lot of fun. But there are limits to this one as well in terms of there are only specific row that you can put any given icon. And then once you've put an icon in a column, that column is locked for that round. So working within the limitations of the game, but really optimizing, it's a really great puzzle. It's very interesting, and I really like that you can play Miyabi on the level of here's the rules, go at it and have fun. Or when you're playing with more strategic players, it gets very, very thinky because you know what tiles are available and you're drafting them essentially, and it gets a little competitive. And I like a lot that it can be played on the complex or the simple level as well. So that is Miyabi.
It is a neat game. My kids, unfortunately, ran away when I was trying to teach it to them. So while I enjoyed it, they didn't really have like the null opinion because they went, I'm not really feeling this tonight, and wandered off. I don't know what they did.
Are they afraid of L-shaped cardboard pieces or something?
I think koi. Yeah, they're not happy with koi. I don't know.
Koi terror. I understand.
Wasn't the game. All right, my number 9 is, well, it's terrific. I will sing it on someone else's. It's higher up somewhere else. I'll
it's
sing that.
musical. I wonder who has it on their list.
Yeah, I wonder. My number 9 is, also on somebody else's list.
You're trying to think of a pun, aren't you?
I was, and it just wasn't coming to me, so it wasn't as witty. Leave it there.
Number 8.
Number 8. I'm the only one with this one on my list. That is the Crusoe Crew.
It's on my kids' list. It's amazing.
This is an offshoot of the graphic novel Adventures from Van Ryder Games. It is a collection of 4 comic book-style graphic novels, and you go on this cooperative adventure, moving from panel to panel, location to location, but each character has slightly different versions of the same book. So while a scene in a room might include a hidden door for my character, because I'm very observant, there might be something that can be broken by another player who is very strong. And so you can go on these sort of side quests and say, oh, well, I can see this thing. Can you guys see anything over here? I think I can head down this little mini adventure, and that may get you some benefit or lead to further danger. It is a very interesting way to have a cooperative adventure, the Crusoe Crew from Van Ryder Games.
Are you excited about the one that's on Kickstarter right now?
There's a one now. What now?
It's Sherlock Holmes and the Baker Street Irregulars.
I saw that one.
Same thing.
Then yes.
My number 8 is part of a series that I am going to be talking up a lot. I've been playing through it and am just so charmed by every game in different ways. But on my number 8 spot, 1987 Channel Tunnel. This is a 2-player game published by Lupin Games out of Spain, in which one player plays France, one player plays the UK, as you are drilling the channel towards each other to meet in the middle. And it is kind of a worker placement game in which you randomly draw out discs from a bag, and those discs become your workers. So if you draw 3 black discs, you'll have a little stack of them, and then you can put them on an action and take that action. But let's say, Tom, you have 4 white discs. You can actually take over that 3 black disc stack, use that action, and take those 3 black discs into your collection for another turn.
Ha ha ha.
Yes, you're diabolical. That worker placement kind of exchange and planning as you see what your opponent has drawn, as you're planning out your actions. It has multi-use cards, which can be used for different actions or for money. I really like that element to it as well. It's a charming game. It comes in a very small, compact box, but it packs a lot of gameplay punch. And that is why 1987 Channel Tunnel is my number 8.
Quick question for you. Have you played 1942?
Yes.
Did you like that one?
I did, but it's kind of real-time cooperative, right?
Yeah.
And not necessarily my favorite mechanisms, but I actually thought it worked quite interestingly.
I played the wrong one first. Okay. I haven't played 87 yet. I played 42, and I thought it was
42 is such a standout. And that's the thing about
best.
Yeah, that's the thing about this series is they're all very, very different. Even if the boxes may look somewhat similar, they have that 19XX naming convention. They're all like 1911 is a race game, 1987 is worker placement, 1920 is a stock game, that kind of thing.
Well, speaking of worker placement, not my number 8. Oh, can't say anything. Someone already beat me to the spot.
Oh, Well, that goes for my number 8 too. Wah, wah.
I don't know why I made a horse noises there, but
Rawhide.
He's not even trying anymore. Okay.
I know.
Number 7.
Number 7 for me is Mental Blocks. It's a game from Pandasaurus where players
wow, I'm really surprised
that it's on there?
that is in your top 10.
Oh, I was really charmed by this one. So players are cooperatively trying to build a structure using these foam blocks, but each player can only see the structure from a certain direction. And you don't know exactly which direction you are when you're handed these cards to begin with. And there's also limits on communication or what can be touched. I may only be able to touch the blue blocks or only large blocks. And so then I'm poking things with the large blocks and trying to communicate, well, I can see this, and this block is here. Where I really think this one is going to shine is in like team building exercises. I can see youth groups playing this. I can see corporate retreats playing this game as a team building communication exercise. And I can't wait to pull this out with the family game group as well. Mental Blocks, number 7.
I talked to Jonathan Gilmore. I don't know if he's the main designer on this one or he's co-designed it, but he said that's what it was initially intended for, to be in like a work type environment or team building and that sort of thing.
Oh,
so that's
sure.
why it's so difficult, It's meant to be like that. So
I agree. I think it's good. I was just surprised it was in Eric's top 10. That's all. I don't
like
mean that in a negative
colorful
way.
blocks.
Well, okay.
yeah.
Nothing. That's okay. Yes.
Alrighty then. My number 7 is In Front of the Elevators. This is a Sashi and Sashi game. Eric, I know you're a fan of Sashi and Sashi as well.
Yes, and I like this one too.
And In Front of the Elevator is a card game. And you have a family, which is associated with a color that you're just trying to score as many points with as you can. You do this by placing family members in lines in front of 3 different elevators. And at the end of the round, if your family members are in the scoring positions closest to the front of the line of a given elevator, you will score points. The trick is that some of these family members take advantage of their other family members. And so they will cut in line when they are played. So little boys might cut in front of little girls, or moms might cut in front of dads, or dads might cut in front of grandmas. So rude. And as you're playing it, you are looking at what other people are playing, what colors they have, because you're drawing from a common pile. So even though Eric might be the blue family, I might have a handful of blue cards. Mm-hmm. So I get to place his family's cards, planning ahead for maybe he might end up with some of mine and all that other jazz. It's a very simple, light game, but it's got a lot of interest. You can plan and play the odds of how things come up. And it's just a lot of fun as you're making different family members cut in line and things like that. So In Front of the Elevators maintains Sashi and Sashi's excellent record of games that I love, and it is my number 7.
All right, my number 7, not as cool sounding as a much more boring theme than In Front of the Elevators, is Rez Arcana. It's just a fantasy game, wizards throwing stuff at each other, trying to knock each other out. And it really is kind of a boring theme, but the game itself is a little engine-building game that you have some sort of wizard, sorcerer, whatever, against somebody else, and you are using a small little tiny deck of cards and trying to figure out how to play these cards in front of you and then use tiles and other cards that are on the table to make an engine. And every game it's a little bit different, and it's such a tight, clean, wonderful little game. It's like, I don't know, it's from Tom Lemon, who did Race for the Galaxy, and you can feel that design space happening here, and I just really like this one. I especially enjoy it with 2 players, Rez Arcana.
This was good. I played this recently, and it also holds a special place in my heart because I was 1 point away from defeating this guy that goes to game night, and he's so good. So that made me feel that much better about this game. So quite enjoyed it.
It's a really tight game.
No, it was. It really was. It literally came down to a tiebreaker. So it was excellent. My number 7. It's a Wonderful World. Oh,
I see. I can't. Okay, you ruined it. I can't sing it now.
I'm sorry.
She
I'm
was
sorry.
better than I would have been. So I will.
I had to do it. They were waiting for it. So It's a Wonderful World is a card drafting game. It was reminiscent a little bit for me as a Seven Wonders feel to it. I don't 100% know what the theme is in this game, so please excuse me for that. If someone else knows it, let me know. But it didn't matter. In the game, it takes place over 4 rounds, and you're drafting in a normal game 7 cards. And then what you're going to do is once you've drafted, you now decide these cards, am I going to be building them or am I going to be tossing them away for their resources? The reason why you might want to keep them is because once you've completed them, because there is a requirement of resources that you need, they're going to kind of go into your hold or area that once you've built them. And at the bottom, there are sometimes resources you can gain when we get to the phase of collecting resources, which in turn are going to help you complete cards that you had chosen to build. And these could be points for end of the game, multipliers, that sort of thing. This is really important because when you're resolving how you get resources, it's in a specific order. So I think it starts with gray and then it goes to black and so forth. But during that time when you're collecting resources, you go around, hey, who has the most gray? They get a bonus, but everyone gets their gray, and they get to put them on those cards that they're trying to build. The thing is, if you finish a card, it can now go into that line of cards that you're gaining resources for, and you may end up getting more resources for something that you're going to resolve later. Therefore, you may, blue hasn't been resolved yet, but it might be resolved later on down the line, and then you can put it on other buildings and, again, put it into your line of gaining resources. So we repeat this for 4 rounds, and at the end of the rounds, you count up all your cards with multipliers, that sort of thing, and see who wins. It's simple looking at it, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this game. I liked it quite a bit. It actually left me thinking. It's an easier teach, even though it has that Seven Wonders feel. It's an easier teach, I find, for someone maybe who's just come into the hobby or just in general. It's a Wonderful World was, well, wonderful. I enjoyed it.
Yes, this was on my list too. It was my number 9, right? Yeah, it's like not a faster, but it's similar to Race for the Galaxy in ways. And Seven Wonders, I love the theme. I love the art. I just love that kind of like, what should I build and when?
Yeah.
It's really cool, and it's fast too.
Yes, and everyone's talking to themselves. Do you do that? They're like, I can use this card, and no, I want to do... Like, the whole game, everybody's talking to themselves. That's great.
I don't listen to other people's conversations with themselves. It's rude, right?
Sure.
It's
a
only
wonderful world.
4 turns. It is a very compressed timeline for this game.
Right.
And you need to get those cards that are going to trigger within that same round so that you can get have more things trigger as quickly as possible. It's interesting.
Exactly. I like it.
So It's a Wonderful World. My number 9, Mandy's number 7.
Number 6.
Number 6 for me is Aftermath. This is the latest storybook game from Jerry Hawthorne and Plaid Hat Games. I think it may be, it's just been released in the last couple weeks, so it hasn't gotten quite as much notice. And I think that already having 2 storybook games, adventure book games out, makes it a little tougher for this one to stand out. But Aftermath is the most like Mice and Mystics of these so far. It is the most persistent of these games, meaning that the status of your colony as you go out on these adventures persists from round to round, session to session. And it's also the most streamlined, I think, of all of them. It is a solid adventure game of small animals trying to forage and keep their colony alive in the face of this weird event where all the humans have disappeared. It's a little post-apocalyptic, actually. Beautiful art, wonderful story. I've really enjoyed so far. Aftermath, my number 6.
I have a copy of this. I have not managed to crack it yet, but I love the idea. And not only does it do all that carryover, but thematically, you're still little rodents running around town.
Mm-hmm. Searching for onion snoodles.
But in like the modern era.
Yes.
My number 6 is Nova Luna. This is published by Edition Spielweis, and the designers are Uwe Rosenberg and Corné van Moorsel. And this is the game that feels like 3 and 4 player patchwork to me. I love patchwork. And I kind of hoped as that Polyomino series had come out, like Cottage Garden and Indian Summer, that they would give me that feel of patchwork. And they never did. I enjoyed them for different reasons. But they never made me feel like that tension and excitement that I loved about patchwork. Nova Luna gives me that excitement. It has a similar time track in terms of whose turn it is. So whoever's behind, it's still their turn, and as you're taking tiles, they have a cost that will move you forward, so that is influencing what tiles you pick as well. And really, it's very, very simple. You've got a handful of tokens, and you get these tiles that have dots on them, and it's a race game. The first person to get rid of all their tokens onto tiles wins the game. And you do this by placing tiles into a grid, because if you have a circle that says, I want to be next to 2 blue tiles, then if you put 2 blue tiles next to that tile, you get to put one of your tokens on, ta-da. But there are tons of these circles on every tile, and they have different requirements. So as you're taking other tiles to fulfill them, you're really trying to map out and plan how you can make all these work, and you can get as many complete at once. And sometimes you can have really fabulous turns where you complete multiple circles at once. And Corné van Moorsel is listed as a co-designer in part because Uwe took a mechanism from the game Habitats. And to fulfill this requirement, you can chain link the tiles. So if I need 2 blue tiles, I don't have to have the 2 blue tiles directly next to that tile. I can have the 2 blue tiles next to each other instead. And Tom and Eric, we have played Habitats together. I don't know if you remember this. It was years ago.
Yep.
And was that
in which Tom definitely did not completely mess up teaching the game.
What did I do wrong? I don't remember. I don't believe I've ever made a rules teaching error like ever. So this would be
We're going to need to take a break in the recording for this one, folks. So, and certainly not with a very obvious scenario that was literally in a called out, highlighted specific example in the rulebook. That never happened.
Those definitely are the things I see the best.
Absolutely, Tom.
I think
But
we're all
Nova
in
Luna
agreement here.
borrows that mechanism, and it works fabulously well. It plays very quickly. It's thinky enough that it's interesting. Uwe just has that magic, and it clicks and sparkles in Nova Luna. Arguably, it's the colors could be an issue for colorblind players and things like that. But from a gameplay point of view, I just love Nova Luna. It has all that energy of Patchwork, but it goes up to 4.
Nova Luna's great. I really enjoyed that one as well.
All right, my number 6 is Aquatica. This is from the folks who made smartphone.
Cosmodrome.
Right. This one got some buzz at Essen. I haven't heard much, but I do know that somebody is reprinting this in America at some point. This is a really pretty game with lots of underwater sea stuff. But what's cool about it is it has that mechanism I love, where you have a handful of cards, you play one, and then you play another one, you do the action on it, but you can't pick them up till you play the one that lets you pick them all back up. And then you're conquering or buying territories, and then you can slide these territories in the board to give yourself bonus actions. And if I have not mentioned it, there are plastic mantas, Rez, in this game, which you can flip over to get more bonuses. It's a very much bare-bones engine-building game, but I like it. Aquatica, my number 6.
This was a pleasant experience, and then Suzanne had the opportunity to play with the designer at Essen. I'm a little jealous. That's all.
It was so much fun. Yeah, I had such a blast. And I have very much enjoyed my plays of Aquatica.
My number 6, this game was actually brought to my attention by Miss Suzanne Sheldon. 9 Tiles Panic. So I guess this would be a real-time game. It turns into that anyway at some point.
I'm shocked to see this on your list because of that factor, Mandy.
Right? But it's just so good, and it's so straightforward. So it's an oink game, so it comes in a slightly larger box than the original ones, but that's okay. It's bright pink, so it makes up for it. And in the game, players get tiles that they're going to use to build roads, but how do you know what to build? You have 3 kind of objective cards that come out each round, and it might say something along the lines of, points awarded to the longest road, or points for the agent. Yes, you have little agents on your tiles that catch the most aliens. There are also aliens. And potentially, these aliens like hamburgers. So you may have a card that says the aliens who eat the most hamburgers. And this just means you have to position your tiles in a way where the aliens are facing the hamburgers, or for the agents capturing the aliens, they need to be facing the aliens when you position your tiles. So you don't get all day to do this. I think it's a 3x3 grid, if I'm not mistaken, off the top of my head. It's a 1, 2, 3, go. Lay out your tiles. Try to meet the objectives as quickly as possible. Whoever is first, they're done. They've met the rules, like all their roads are connected and not connecting to, ends of tiles and stuff. And they're like, I'm done. They grab the timer, flip it. Now everybody else has about, a minute or so to try and get theirs done, their tiles together as well before time runs out, or their board won't be scored. So you do this until you reach a certain amount of points, depending on player count. And that's it. So Nine Tiles Panic for me was, I'm not a big fan of real-time anything in games, but really like this one. Quick play, easy. Love it.
I'm so glad because it is fabulous.
Fantastic.
Number 5.
We already mentioned my number 5 when we were talking about the cooperative games earlier in the episode. That's Quirky Circuits. So the only thing I'll mention in addition to that is these adorable miniatures that represent the characters that you're moving around. One of them is a robotic dog that can actually hold cardboard tokens in its mouth. And that's one of the mechanisms is they run and fetch stuff, and you actually stick the token in their mouth, and it holds it there, and then you move it around. And that is adorable. Adorable. Quirky Circuits, my number 5.
There's
no
Eric? Arguing.
What is it again?
It's adorable.
There it is. Okay.
Adorable.
I think I have a new ringtone for Eric on my phone. It's adorable.
Oh, I got better ringtones. You'll see.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy.
So no.
Well, my number 5 is not adorable.
Oh.
So
It's the opposite.
It's not even
There's
really
that.
that good of quality, unfortunately. No. I'm not saying the game is bad. The game is amazing. I'm saying the component quality could have been better.
Got it.
Oh, geez, Louise! I was gonna have.
No, this is one of the best 2-player games I've played in a really, really, really long time.
Okay. Phew. Well, now that that's out of the way, my number 5 is Blitzkrieg. That's Blitzkrieg with an exclamation point after it. This is a 2-player game designed by Paolo Mori, which is actually the only reason it caught my attention when I saw it pop up on the Essen list was Paolo Mori's name, who of course designed things like Rise of Augustus and Libertalia. But Blitzkrieg is published by PSC, Plastic Soldier Company, which is typically a war game publisher. So I thought that this was really fascinating. Blitzkrieg is a 2-player game in which one person plays the Allies and one player plays the Axis. Very familiar theme. But really, it's all highly abstracted with these areas on a board representing the different areas of war, and they're really tug-of-war tracks where you're trying to take control of different spots and move these little tokens all the way to your side of a tug-of-war track. When you put one of your tokens down, it's going to move that tug-of-war track a little bit, but the board itself also has actions printed on. So maybe you get an extra pull, maybe you get an extra token, maybe you get to destroy an enemy's token, that kind of thing. It plays, and it's bag building. It's drawing out of bags. You draw tokens randomly, and then you have to make do with what you have. It is very quick to teach. It is very quick to play, and it is very thoughtfully done. So you feel like you've had a very rewarding and satisfying gameplay experience in a relatively short amount of time. It plays very smoothly, and I have just had a blast. Everybody I've taught it to has really enjoyed it, and it was definitely a treasure I was so glad I picked up at Essen, and that is Blitzkrieg.
It's good. Good.
Yes.
Alrighty, my number 5 is Lockup, a role-player tale. I like role-player a lot. Lockup is in the same universe. It has nothing to do with it other than theming. You're a bunch of orcs or goblins or whatever thrown in jail and trying to get out, but it's a worker placement game. You place workers. Some of them you can place face down. Most of them you play face up. But once you place workers in a spot, you can't go there again, and you want the total of your workers to be higher than everyone else's, leading it to be tense, frustrating, and fun. Really enjoyable, very straightforward, cool game, Lockup, a role-player tale.
I just got this one.
That was so close
I'm
to making my top 10.
Really? I'm excited to play it. I've been hearing very good things.
Not everyone likes it, but I really did enjoy it.
My number 5, I think is also a favorite of Z's, if I'm not mistaken, is Trails of Tukana. So this is published by Aporta Games, and we actually had a chance to play it at Essen with a big group, and we really enjoyed it. So it's flippin' right. Can I say that? Mm-hmm. Okay, just want to make sure I'm saying the right things. And so in this game, It's literally that, flip and right. So we have cards that have, I don't want to say locations, but they have different types of terrain on them, and 2 of them are going to be flipped at a time. And this lets you know you can draw a line from a certain point using those terrain types that are visible. Now, it's a 2-parter game. I'm absolutely horrible at it. But you want to try and make these connections to little pictures that are on the board. So there's one that's supposed to be, I think, like an abominable snowman or something.
A Yeti.
Cat?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a Yeti.
Yeah.
It looks like a workout cat. I can't explain it.
A workout cat.
He's buff.
Yes, he's buff. That's for sure.
Oh, I digress. I mean, there are things like that. There's like a little thing that looks like an Ogopogos. What do you call that? An underwater snake. I'm sorry, it's a BC thing.
I feel like you're literally making things up at this point.
It's a sea monster, but yeah.
Thank you. Sea monster. Oh, okay. I'm just going to stop there. There are things on the board that you need to connect together in order to get points. The more of them you connect, the better for you, because you can get bonus lines that you can draw additionally. And you want to make these connections to these pictures, but also to letters on the board. And we all kind of start at different letters at the beginning of the game, but you want to make the connections to the letters because you have cards A, B, C, D, E, and so forth. And once you've made connections from one point of point A to the end of point A, for example, you'll get those points at the end of the game, and then nobody else can score them. So you do, there's 2 rounds of this, if I'm not mistaken, and then you calculate it based on how many points you achieved in both rounds. I am absolutely horrific at this game, as been pointed out by my friends, but it doesn't mean that I don't enjoy it thoroughly. So Trails of Tukana is a win for me.
This one just barely made, or just missed my list. It's maybe 11 or 12. I really enjoyed this one. It's probably my favorite of the roll and write, flip and write genre I've played in the last few months. I actually prefer the flip side of the board where you play 3 rounds on a larger island. It just gives you a little more opportunity to build stuff. It's cool.
I haven't played that side. And anybody who speaks Spanish or Francais, don't look at the titles. It will drive you crazy. They seem to have done a mélange of the 2 languages. And, of course, it's yeah.
Number 4.
My number 4 is going to show up on someone else's list in just a little bit, so I'll just be here whistling softly to myself.
Terrible. Terrible.
Alrighty. My number 4 is also somebody else's number 4.
Well, then you might as well say it at the same time.
Oh, you want to say it? Okay, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Hodari.
That sounded perfect.
Wow. All right. Hodari is from Hamzen Gluck and Z-Man Games, designed by Benjamin Schwer, and as soon as I played it, I was charmed by it. It's a tableau building game. And what is great about it is that as you are getting these cards to fulfill different things, you pick a card and you keep it, and then you discard a card. But the great thing about the discards is that when you go back for the second half of the game, those are the cards that you're going to have access to. And I think that that's really the hook in Hodari that I personally think stands out as you're doing that. You are playing cards, trying to build up strength in 4 different categories like gold and military and art. And you get to choose your end game scoring by selecting which metals that you might want to buy into, whether it's going for diversity of sets or whether you want to hyper focus on a certain type of track that you're playing these cards to gain in. And it plays very smoothly once you know how to play. And I think that playing off of your discard is really, really interesting as well. And I've had a blast. I've played it a lot this year, which doesn't happen very often because I try to play so many different games, but Hodari is one that keeps on making it back to the table, and that is why it had to be my number 4.
I don't own it, but I've played it a lot, so I have a lot of people who do own it, and I taught it to one of my groups at Essen, and I was lucky to have someone in my group who also knew the game very well, so it was actually a really fun time. And I was worried looking at this game, because I think the original box art, I was like, oh, I don't know. And then they changed them, like, oh, it's so much better. And then, so it's really going to attract people, I think, to say, oh, tell me more about this game. So I really enjoyed it, and I like the fact that I think it plays 5, does it not?
I'm pretty sure it does.
I'm pretty sure it does, which is great. And it plays 5, but it plays quickly at 5. It's not long.
Some people call it the 7 Wonders. It replaces 7 Wonders for them because it's drafting and that kind of thing. I don't know if I feel that way about it, but I sure do love it.
Alrighty, well, I have to get this one played still. My number 4 is a game I didn't really jump to play because the first 2 words were Imperial Settlers, and I've already played Imperial Settlers, right?
Yep.
And I thought, how different will Empires of the North be? And it's quite different. It's really good. It's a great 2-player game with extremely different factions in it. You grab a deck. You don't have the deck build. It's just yours. You play against someone else. And it's an engine-building game, which is something if you notice, I'm tending to like. As I play these cards and tap this card to give me some resources and use this action as a little rondel thing in it going on. It's fast. It's just, especially the 2-player version of it, so back and forth and entertaining. I played with the new Japanese factions, too, which I enjoyed. And they just announced Roman ones. I'm very pumped about this. I think it's vastly superior to Imperial Settlers.
Oh.
But I wouldn't say they're the same games. Like, if you like one, you might not like the other, and so on. But I like Imperial Settlers, but Empires of the North, fantastic. My number 4, but it's also Mandy's number 8.
I never played Imperial Settlers, so I had nothing to compare it to, but then I had friends who had, and they said that this was less restrictive. Like, I guess there's certain things you can't carry over in Imperial Settlers. I haven't played it, so I'm not 100%
Yeah, it is
sure.
a little easier, for sure.
Yeah.
Number 3.
My number 3 was on Mandy's list way back at number 9. That is Detective City of Angels. This is a competitive mystery-solving game. You've got one player playing the chisel and sort of running the mystery for everyone, but you're running around L.A. and looking for clues and talking to people, interrogating people, and finding evidence that the other players don't get to look at. So not only are you trying to find stuff out for yourself, but you're watching what your opponents do, and suddenly somebody goes darting across town somewhere else. It's like, wait, what do you know? And so you can bribe police officers to find out that information or try and, figure it out yourself, follow the same trail, but then you're behind them. It's really cool. Plus, I'm not going to lie, I found a clue that Jason missed when I played this game. And that made me pretty darn happy.
Man, you're never, ever going to let that go.
I am not, because it's awesome. Detective City of Angels, number 3.
Fair enough. I wouldn't have either.
No.
This is great, and I won this game as the chisel. I hate being the one in a game. Like, I detest it because I'm awful at it. But this game doesn't make me feel pressure. You know what I mean? Like, I like the fact that I can choose, these are the answers I want to give, and I just happen to be really good at it. And then, on top of all this goodness, there's a listing of the type of vernacular they use during that time frame. Have you seen it? Oh my goodness. Go and look at it. It is hilarious. We had an hour of just giggles and laughs looking at some of this, and we're trying to incorporate it in our everyday, speech. So take a look. I tell you, another bit of fun with that game.
My number 3 is Tiny Towns. This is a game designed by Peter McPherson, published by Alderac Entertainment Group, in which you are putting resource cubes on your little tiny town grid. Oh, I just figured that's where the name came from. And if you get the right pattern of resource cubes, they condense into a little building. And all of those little buildings score differently. So at the end of the game, once you have all your little buildings up, you figure out how you've managed to optimize your tiny town. It reminds me of some of these app games in which you're matching 3 icons and then they condense instead of disappear. And I really like those kinds of games. And I really like Tiny Towns as well. The thing about Tiny Towns is it is difficult to do well. This game is so difficult. Oh my goodness.
But not to play,
Right.
to do well at.
Correct. Yes.
Right.
Rules are dead simple. Absolutely. But to do it well and to figure out and to play in your space, it's very, very clever. It's very entertaining. There is a nice range of buildings. You get all these little wooden meeples that represent the different building styles. So maybe the red building looks a little bit like a barn. But in gameplay, there's actually 3 different buildings that barn could be. And you only play with one of them in a given game. So there's also a ton of variability as you mix and match different buildings and play. And they all score differently. And some combos score better than others together. And there's 2 different ways you can play. There is a deck of cards that can dictate what resource everybody has to play in a turn. Or you can play where somebody is the master builder and they get to declare as the person in charge every turn gets to declare the resource that everybody gets to play instead. Both ways are super duper fun, and it's really interesting as you're getting into late game and you're looking around at what people need, and you want to make sure you call the perfect resource that you can use but they can't. A lot going on for a very rules simple game, and it just keeps on drawing me back again and again and again. And that is Tiny Towns, my number 3.
My number 3 is Eric's number 4. It is easily the most popular game that came out this year, and that is Wingspan from Elizabeth Hargrave, Stonemeyer Games, about birds. Actually, I've seen some people complain about the theme. I think the theme's cool. I like birds.
It's great.
You know,
Birds are great.
And it's an engine-building game with pastel-colored eggs and collecting food to feed your birds, and then when you get these birds, you activate them in rows, and then they accomplish things. It gets this engine going and running smoothly. I really enjoy it. There's some luck sometimes in the birds that you get, and you know, I can live with that, but as a game that I just kind of want to play over and over again, it's pretty strong for me, which is why I like Wingspan. Also great art, as Eric mentioned earlier.
Yes, indeed. And I really love the graphic design of this one, where you said you activate these in rows, Tom. It just, graphically, it all flows together. It's all happening left to right, and it's very easy to see how you're supposed to trigger stuff because it all just flows the way it's supposed to. It makes it a lot easier to grasp Wingspan.
So my number 3 was Tom's number 8, Paladins of the West Kingdom. So I'm going to throw this to Tom because I seem to have excluded this from my notes, and my memory is very short. So I don't want to exclude anything.
Well, the main thing about Paladins is, first of all, it's a sequel to Architects, which was a great game. But Paladins is sort of a worker placement game, except most of the placement happens on your own board. And you collect various meeples of different colors, but you can only put them in the spots where that color goes. And it has these 4 different tracks that you're kind of following, 3 different tracks, military, religious, and political, or something like that. And moving up on one you need the other 2 to back you up, so you're kind of trying to focus on this weird balancing act, and yet you have to pick something to focus on. If you do a points out thing, I'll do a little bit of everything, you'll lose. I don't know, it's just really fulfilling. It's a bunch of mechanisms, really, thrown together in a box. But they all play pretty well. It's his heaviest game that he's designed so far, but I think it's the best one of the series.
I agree.
100%, because I was not a fan of Architects. Again, I need to play it again, but I loved this. I like the use of the cards, where you got to choose, one that goes on top, one that goes on the bottom, one that you're going to play, because it helps you plan a little bit. I quite like that in the game.
I will have to play this soon.
Yes.
Number 2.
My number 2 is one of the latest in the Star Wars franchise from Fantasy Flight Games, Outer Rim. This is a pick-up-and-deliver game in space, so yeah. It is also one of those adventure-style games that actually pushes a lot of the same buttons as Firefly has for me, but it's a little more streamlined. It has the danger of the raiding ships, the different factions that are hunting you down. You might be wanted with them if you have a bad reputation with them. You're finding characters from the franchise and delivering stuff as you fly around and complete missions and upgrade your ship. And you can actually go from a generic version of your ship to the legendary version of your ship if you complete a particular task. All of that stuff comes together in a really nice package, and I have enjoyed Star Wars Outer Rim, my number 2.
So Firefly-esque, would you say?
It is certainly Firefly
Killer, I believe is
I'm not going to say it kills it, but I do think it does it better, yes.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going to say this, and I don't want to be added on Twitter, but I kind of want to try this now. I love Firefly.
Yeah. No, I do too.
Space games. We know how you feel about space games,
We know,
Mandy.
Right.
Mandy loves space games.
That did not need to be said.
My number 2 is Cartographers. And earlier in the show, when we were doing extra categories, normally I probably would have done a favorite roll and write of the year. But I realized I didn't have to do that because Cartographers is such a standout. It was going to make my top 10 easily, and here it is. This is a card-based roll and write game designed by Jordi Adden, and it's published by Thunderworks. It's set in that role-player universe, which is similar with Lockup in that I guess this universe is just a universe where I like to play games because I love all 3 of those. And Cartographers is where you are flipping cards that have Tetris-like shapes on them with different types of terrain, whether it's a forest or a field or lake, what have you. And you're filling in your sheet, trying to make them match up as best as you can according to the scoring cards. And it takes the scoring mechanism that was used in Isle of Skye that I really like as well, where you'll have 4 different things that will score, and different ones will score each round. And eventually you'll score all of them twice, but when they score really, really matters. And you're looking at these and you're trying to plan ahead. You're figuring out which ones you want to give up on early and focus for later game, or which ones you can accomplish now. And that will change from game to game, because depending on a single scoring card could play totally differently if it is the A card versus the D card. And all of that comes together beautifully. Also, there are monster cards, and these are cards that let you draw on your opponent's sheet when they come up.
I love it.
Penny Arcade, the Penny Papers did this as well, and I did not like it in that one. It was ruinous. It was absolutely ruinous in terms of what you could do to another player's sheet, and it would really destroy the game for them in a negative way. I think Cartographers strikes a great balance with how writing on another person's sheet doesn't ruin their game. It can mess with them a little bit, but they can recover from it, and it just adds a nice little twist to the gameplay when it happens, and I think that is perfect. Cartographers, I think, is a roll and write game that you can recommend to people who typically say, I don't really like roll and write games. I think it reaches a different echelon. It's a fabulous game. I love it, love it, love it, and that is why it is my number 2.
This was my 3B game. It's not in there, but I really like this game. Don't say anything. I see you, Eric. It was there.
What does that even mean?
Do we have letters now? Nobody told me. I didn't get the letter memo.
All right.
It's the one written behind the list.
My number 2 F game is Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon. This gigantic, massive game from Awakened Realms. And their games are huge, sometimes a little messy, spilling all over the place like Nemesis. But this game, which takes a dark look at Arthurian legends, players are going through, trying to figure out what's going on. Basically, in this game, you are a understudy hero. You're not a hero, I'm sorry. You're just a guy in town, and you get a letter that says, the heroes who left never came back, so you guys go now and see what happens. That's who you are in this game. And it's really great storytelling game. Cool combat system, cool political system, but it is a game that I play solo, not a solo gamer, but I play solo and go around, and I'm just having a great time with it. I'm very anxious to see the ending of it. Tons of fun. Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon.
Was this a Kickstarter? This sounds very
This was a mega Kickstarter, yes.
Okay, I'm adding it to the list because I don't get to play a lot of storytelling games, and I actually really like them. So, and you played it solo. I'm not a solo player, but if you're playing it solo, you think it's...
Yeah, I very rarely play solo games these days, except every third game, it seems. But yes.
Okay, adding to the list. My number 2 is The Magnificent, so another game published by Aporta. And in this game, you're trying to attract people to your shows. I don't know, is it circus or magic? I haven't quite figured that out yet. I'm going to go with magic because of the colors on the board. And this game, I think you only get like 12 turns. I hope I said that right. Has anybody else played it here?
Tom has.
I have.
Okay, Tom has. Okay.
I have. I think it's fine.
Really? Okay, so I really like this, but I like in the game, so basically you're trying to attract people to your shows, and every player has, their own board. You have cards that are on the bottom of your board that you're going to use to enact, to do your actions. But in order to kind of activate them, you need dice. And there's a pool of different colored dice, orange, green, clear, and so forth. Clear are kind of like a wild, but you have to be careful about accumulating a lot of the clear because then it can cost you more money. So when you're taking dice, you want to be sure to kind of stay within the same color because you end up at the end of the round paying for the use of them, but you pay for the highest number of each color you've taken. So if you took a 6 orange and a 3 orange, and then you took a 5 green and a 3 clear, you're now paying the 3, the 5, and the 6. So you want to make sure it's better to kind of stay within the color. I digress. Each of the things that you can take with the actions, there's a board where you can have movement, and this allows you to acquire gems and camps. So camps are things you need to place on your board in order to have your shows to perform them and get the bonus. So these camps are the shows are cards that you choose, and you have to complete the cards by building, what do you call them, polyomino shapes on your board, by having the specific shapes on your board. And there's an action to get these types of shapes, but it's hard because you have to have a certain number of kind of pip points in order to do it. There are other actions that are similar to this, but you only have 12 rounds to kind of get all these shows done, which are going to give you points at the end of the game. You also get to upgrade the cards that you continually use at the bottom to take your actions. I really liked it. I liked the dartboard. I think had they added some gold foiling and things like that, it would have made it look a bit nicer. But the actual tightness of the game, I liked it because you only had a certain amount of rounds to get all of your things done, so it allowed you to really plan and make sure that you were doing things properly and not spending too much money. I'm super cheap, so I feel like in this game you have to spend the money to kind of push ahead, so use those dice if you need them. But I really enjoyed it. You said you found it okay.
Sure, no, I liked it. I was really, really, really disappointed that the theme did not show up even a tiny bit.
Right.
That's fair. I 100% agree with you. That definitely could have been a bit better. 100%.
And finally, number 1.
Number 1, I don't think is a huge surprise for me based on my discussion earlier in the episode. That is Horrified, the cooperative game about the universal monsters. It is a bunch of basically mini pick up and deliver quests. You are running around getting items and taking them to places, but each monster plays a little bit differently. You have a different sequence of things you need to do. You can also adjust the difficulty in facing 1, 2, 3 monsters. It's a little too easy with just 1, but 3 can be very difficult as you try and figure out what to focus on. And each one plays a little bit differently. I really enjoy this one, and I've purchased several copies of this game to give as gifts this year. So, Horrified, my favorite of the year.
In a never-before-seen thing, I think, on the Dice Tower, we have a 3-way crossover for number 1.
Dun, dun, dun.
Except for Eric, the odd man out. Hold your ground, Eric. Great games. I don't even have a problem with any of Eric's games this time. I'll have to look at them later and see. There's probably a mistake.
I'm sure there's something you can argue with, yeah.
For me, this was a no-brainer, but I was very surprised that y'all put this on your list too, and that would be Clank Legacy Acquisitions Incorporated from Direwolf / Renegade Games, a legacy game that for once I finished.
Right? Exactly. Me too.
Absolutely. And
play it again.
I want to play it again.
Oh,
I
I have.
like Clank Legacy so much. I want to do it again.
I played it with the packs, the upper management pack.
Oh, I don't have those.
It's good.
Yeah, but I don't even know that I want to do. Well, they also have the C team out too now.
C team as well.
I don't know that I want to go through and play it again, but I'll gladly play the game, my version of it.
Right.
Yes.
I mean,
in fact,
it's a fully playable game when you're done.
Oh, yeah, and we played it like that and then played it with the pack, and it was still great. Still really good.
I have a small local convention that I help run coming up in a couple of months, and I'm going to bring my Clank Legacy, and I'm actually going to ask a group to play it out of the box as is, with the rule, have all the adjustments in place, just to see how it plays to somebody who didn't go through the journey to end up in that space, just to see how they enjoy it. Hopefully they know basic Clank already, and just see how is it a game you end up where it's just you and your buddies that end up loving it, or is it a game that, hey, it adds some complexity to Clank formula that anybody can jump into? I'm just doing that as an experiment because it won't change the fact that I absolutely adore Clank Legacy. It was one of the best gaming experiences I have ever had in my life. It was a complete blast. It had great humor. It had interesting gameplay. I just love it. And I'm not surprised to see it at the top of all of our lists. Oh, except for Eric's.
It is my favorite legacy game that I played. I think the writing is really well done. It's funny, but also is a good story. Mm-hmm. And I like Clank, so that didn't hurt, to throw all that together. I'm very excited about it. My number 1. And all y'all's number 1.
All y'all's.
Except for Eric.
We love you, Eric.
That is our top 10 of 2019. This episode is being posted on Christmas Eve. So Hello to all you out there. Merry Christmas to everyone. Our next show is actually, New Year's Eve, I guess. So the year is coming to a close. But I do want to quickly remind everyone our Kickstarter for our show is starting on January 6th of 2020. All kinds of cool things. And I should mention, there's a promo for Clank Legacy in that Kickstarter.
Oh, well, now I should play it.
Yeah, well, Eric was just waiting for that moment, right? Mm-hmm. For that to come there.
Yeah.
So, any other thoughts before we shut down? This has been longer than I thought.
Oh, but no.
I think 2019 was another great year in gaming, and I was glad to see the return of the Euro, as you mentioned, Tom. And knowing what's coming up in 2020, I'm telling you, games are it's so hard because games are so good nowadays. It's a good time to be a game player.
I want to see some more weird themes. Themes that are like, it's so weird, it's good.
You should play Fire Tower.
Nope.
Added to the list.
Alrighty, folks. Well, thanks so much for listening. We'll see you all next time. Until then, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Andy Hutchinson.
I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 638, was recorded on December 19th, 2019. Mandy and Suzanne are back next week, and then in 2 weeks, Tom and I crank up the time machine to look back at our top 10 games from 2015. Support for this podcast comes from listeners like you. Thank you for spreading the word. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. Find out more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and Eric, with production assistance from Roy Kennedy, Mike Delisio, and Rob Seary. Our theme was composed by Timothy Pinkham. Our reality series about a group of hopefuls competing to become Santa's newest helper, provided by Project Elf. And hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at CoolStuffInc.com. We love feedback. Visit the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, email us at Dicetower@gmail.com, or follow us on Facebook. And of course, you can find more from the Dice Tower Network, including All the Bits, Men on Board, Cardboard and Wine, Sporadically Board, Board Game Design Lab, Tabletop Game Talk, The Family Gamers, The Portal Gaming Podcast, and Board Game Breakfast at Dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. You know, at this point, I think I shouldn't play Clank Legacy, just to hold my ground.
You're such a rebel.
You won't resist.
Yeah, I'm okay with this.
You know what fits really well into Clank Legacy? Rebels.
Oh, jeez.